Okay, welcome to module 4 of this user training series at Pawsey. The topic is moving data in and out of Pawsey. And this is module 4 out of 11 of the training series. So the learning outcomes for this module include describing the what and the why of the data mover nodes at Pawsey, and what it means to stage and archive data in and out the Pawsey systems. And we're also going to see with the live sessions how to move data in and out of the Scratch file system at Pawsey. Watch out for these signs. They highlight key callouts during this session. Okay. So in the previous module, we've talked about file systems available at Pawsey for storing data during various stages of the workflow. In this module, we're going to see how to actually bring data in and out Pawsey from your own computers. So a key player in this space are the data mover nodes. These are dedicated servers within the Pawsey infrastructure that are designed for data transfers between both between the various file systems and storage hardware within Pawsey, but also between the Pawsey systems and the external world. So this means that they're connected both to all Pawsey storage locations and the outside world through the internet. It's quite important to transfer large amounts of data using the data mover nodes and not the login nodes, not to overload the login nodes. So just a very quick conceptual sketch of staging data at Pawsey and storing them away. So when in this module, when I'm saying staging data at Pawsey, I mean the action and process of copying data from some location in the world, your own computer, your institutional storage service, to Pawsey servers. So sometimes we'll also say pushing data to Pawsey, and so this is basically going from the world to the data mover nodes, and this way to the file systems in Pawsey, specifically for data that would be the Scratch file system in this context. And when we say archiving data, we mean copying data away from Pawsey servers to some location in the world. So pulling data away from the Pawsey file system like Scratch, using the data mover nodes, and to the outside world. As I said in the previous slide, it's important to use the data mover nodes to stage and archive data. Not to overload the login nodes, not to overload the compute nodes, because we have these data mover nodes which are specifically designed for transferring data. And that's also, again, a way to ensure that all components of the Pawsey systems can be used effectively by all the users that are sharing the system. Note that in this module, we are focusing on transferring data between the world and Pawsey through the data mover nodes directly to the file systems such as Scratch. In these diagrams, we also have Acacia, which in principle is another option to stage and archive data to and from Pawsey, but this will be covered extensively in the last module in this training series. So how to access the data mover nodes? These are similar to the login nodes, actually. They are remotely accessible using SSH or SCP, which is a command similar to SSH, just designed for copying data in a secure way. So unlike typical industrial scale servers, Pawsey firewalls enable both incoming and outgoing SSH connections, and in this way, it's possible to transfer data back and forth by connecting from a computer that is external to Pawsey. It's also important to keep in mind that the data mover nodes are also accessible from the login nodes of Cetonix and eventually from the compute nodes by using a special scheduler partition, which I'm going to talk about later. Okay, now let's go without further chat after having called out data mover nodes and the fact that they can be remotely accessed. from the local computer. Let's give it a go. So I'm now gonna go for a demo with my own terminal. So just follow me as I type this new command, and there will be a small exercise for you after the demo. So let me go back to the terminal and actually log out Cetonix. This was from a previous module. Let me also clear the screen just for clarity. So now I'm just gonna make up a pretend file that I suppose it would be an input file or some data I need to stage into Pawsey for processing. So let me just create a file now. And let us just call it my file. So the file is now here. Let's use this one as an example. So let's use scp as the command to transfer this file from my local computer to Cetonix, and then we'll verify the process. So the syntax is kind of similar to the copy command of Linux with some additions though. So the first argument will be the origin files that we want to copy, and the second argument will be the destination. But in the destination, we need to specify the username and the server name where we want to copy the file to, because this is a remote copying process. It's not in the local machine. So scp, my file is the file name. Then will be the username at Cetonix. This is what we should not do. So Cetonix are the login nodes. What we're going to use is actually the data mover nodes. And that's a special name for the data mover servers. That's what we want to use when we transfer data back and forth with the scp or other copy programs. So data mover with dash.pawsey.org.au. Then we need to add a colon, and then we can add the destination, the directory we want to copy files to. So that will be on the Scratch file system. That's a space for data that we want to process on Cetonix. Let's suppose this file has to be processed in a workflow that I'm going to submit soon on the compute node. So the syntax will be the scratch dash my project, which in my case is Pawsey01. It will be something else for you. And then my username. And that's it. That's where I want to stage my data. I will let it go. This is the first time I actually use scp on the data mover with this shell session. I had to do some cleanup before the training. So it's just asking me if I really want to connect there. Sometimes get this prompt. It's a security measure. Let's go with yes. And then I'm going to be asked the same password that is used for the login. So this is also used for data transfers to the data mover nodes. And then the file is copied. Let me verify this with you. So let me log in Cetonix to verify that the file is actually there. And then again, the password. So here I'm using the login nodes again. I'm going to go there to have a look at my files and directories, and I must have done a typo. Okay, let me go into my Scratch space. If you have forgotten yours for the exercise, this is actually good to recall the location. That's what you need when you actually copy the data from your local laptop. So let's have a look. And here we go. This is the my file that I transferred with the scp a couple of minutes ago. And now let's suppose that I have processed the file. Now we need it back. Let's see how we can use the scp and the data mover nodes again from my local laptop to transfer the data back. And so the syntax is kind of vice versa what I did before. So now the origin is on Cetonix, so it will be scp, my username on Cetonix, at the data mover nodes. And then the location was Scratch, Pawsey0001, my username, and the file is called my file. And let's copy it. Let's remotely copy it here in the local, in the current directory. Type in the password again. Oh yeah, okay. It's let me do it one more time in a more meaningful way. So there was already my file there. So now let's call it in a new way. So let's call the file I'm going to copy in the local destination back from Cetonix, just to demonstrate you the transfer. And now I have back from Cetonix that I just copied back from Cetonix using the data mover nodes. Let me go back to the slide. So I use SCP in this demo. You can also use rsync, which has a similar syntax of some additional options and functionalities. It's covered in detail in our user documentation. There are also graphical user interface options, such as mobexter. Mobexter can perform data transfers with a graphical interface. FileZilla, WinSCP, CyberDuck. Same as SSH login to the Cetonix login nodes. Make sure you're typing the username and passwords correctly, otherwise you can be blacklisted. And it's a good, especially when you use the graphical clients, it's probably a good idea to disable the auto retry when you fail the login, because with this feature on, it means that if you get the password wrong, it will retry until you get blacklisted. So it's typically a good idea to disable that. And again, there is documentation for this in our online docs. And one best practice I didn't show you, but it's because it was just a small example. When you have to transfer a large number of files, say hundreds or so, it's a good idea to transfer them by making a tarball. So creating a single file first before the transfer. This method will result in a more efficient and then faster transfer. And this is just the output that matches the demo I just showed you. Okay, so now this is a page for you to try if you wish to. So a small exercise similar to what I did. The little addition is using the tar command to actually create a little tar archive that you then transfer. So if you like, give it a go. Just stand here for a couple of minutes or 3, and then back to you with some comments on the outputs of this exercise. So the commands to create the dummy files for the exercise are actually these ones in this slide. So the 3echo and then the tarring command. And in the next slide, there is the example with SCP. So it will be SCP archive 1, and then your location by using the data mover server node. And then you can SSH in the login node and check by yourself that the file is actually there. There is one more exercise for you, which is the vice versa, if you wish. So while logged in into Cetonix in my Scratch, create a dummy file there, and then from your local terminal, copy it back to your local computer. And I'm giving just a couple of minutes for this one as well. So let me show you. So here I am. So there is the login to Cetonix, login node, going into Scratch, creating just a little text file, noting down the path, then exiting the connection to Cetonix, and then using SCP to copy that file back. So one last slide around data transfer in and out of Pawsey. Oh, actually, data transfer using the data mover nodes at Pawsey. So as I said at the beginning, the data mover nodes can also be used in scheduler scripts. So these are the scripts that you then submit to the scheduler for execution on the nodes of Cetonix. This is quite useful for scripting and automating your workflows. We're going to cover the topic extensively in the day 2 of this series. So it will be mostly modules 8 and 9, I believe. But for now, what you need to know is that there is this scripted way of automating your workflows, and you can refer and use the data mover nodes there as well. When is that useful? So you can use the data mover nodes also for internal transfers between, for instance, Scratch and Acacia, and that's quite handy in a data workflow on Cetonix. And actually using the data mover nodes themselves for transfers can also be used in principle for transfers between Pawsey and other centers or institutions rather than laptops. And I'm saying that because you cannot typically, so this requires using SSH and SCP from inside the data mover nodes. You cannot typically by default do that from the data mover to the laptop or a personal computer, because there would be a local laptop firewall that blocks that. But you can typically do this type of transfers between institutional machines, so say between Pawsey and NCI, or Pawsey and some university or research center machines. So in that case, you may, if you wish, use the data mover nodes rather than the institutional access for transferring data. And in that case, as I said, you would use the Pawsey job schedulers there, which I'm going to cover extensively in future modules of this series. And the key bit of information is using the copy partition, which is the one. So copy as in copy data. So that's the one that would make use of the data mover nodes to perform the operations that are requested in the script. And SCP and rsync are available on the data mover nodes to that end. Again, same best practice as I was saying before for local transfers. If you have large number of files, back them up in tar archive to make transfer more efficient. So in this module, we learned about data staging and archiving at Pawsey. We saw some examples using SCP from the local laptop to Cetonix and back. And I shared some best practices with you about data transfers. On the Pawsey web support portal, there's quite some useful resources for researchers using the system. User support documentation, which covers a lot of areas in quite great detail, and the user support portal in case you need to get in touch with the Pawsey staff with issues that you can't resolve by yourself. There's also the Pawsey Friends newsletter you can subscribe to for news and events. And the module is finished. The session is open for questions. Thank you.